Welcome to Amplify Digest. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt, and I'll be breaking down some of the top news and trends in all things people in 5 minutes or less. So I want to open with this piece by Microsoft out of the Work Labs, and it posits, are we getting hybrid work wrong? And what I really like about this piece is that it has some specific and actionable recommendations on things that you can be doing to really optimize the hybrid experience in your organizations. Ending productivity paranoia, embracing the fact that people come to work for each other, and re-recruiting your employees. And those last two pieces, I think, are really important. When we look at how we think about recruiting and employer branding, right? We've always known that people are drawn to people. And I think as we think about how we position our organizations and our roles, really doubling down on how we showcase the type of people that new employees will work with, the type of work that they'll do, how work gets done, all those pieces will be really important. And I think the last piece around re-recruiting your employees, this is something that is always what we should be doing, but so often we are focused on external hiring and not internal development and growth and retention. And that's costing us our best people, it's costing us turnover. And so again, I think some practical tips here. There's also a really interesting stat in the piece that talked about 76% of employees would stay at a company longer if they could benefit from more learning and development support. And I think in particular, as we look at budgets tightening right now, and certainly looking at, as of right now, that 2023 is going to be an added year of tighter budgets, likely less promotions, likely less discretionary spending, travel, swag, and I'll get into that with some of the articles today. I think our investment in our people, our investment in their learning and development and growth is going to be an essential component as to how successful we're going to be able to retain our talent. This was a story on an all-hands meeting at Google where their CEO, basically came out and had to push back against some employees who were having a problem with some of their, cost-cutting measures, and really trying to kind of make the case of getting back to their scrappier roots, which they're very far removed from. So let's acknowledge that. But really trying to kind of disassociate money and investment and fun. And I don't know if that's a winning argument in a place like Google, but I think in terms of hearing CEOs and leaders talk about ways that employees need to embrace cost-cutting measures, that is a trend I think we'll see more of as more companies continue to clamp down on spending in the Q4 certainly, and I'm guessing while we're doing budgets for 2023, that's going to be a part of that conversation. And Facebook is also in the news, and this Inc. piece, they've also had some contractions and some layoffs at Meta. They have what is not that uncommon of a practice of having employees reapply for internal positions. And this is a piece that really kind of talks about some of the downside of that, particularly if you have high-performing employees who you would want to move into another role if they are open to that, making them go through the process of applying and interviewing and all those steps when that if they would opt into that role, you would take them. Again, I think that there are a range of perspectives on this topic, and asking internal employees to apply for roles in the face of layoffs. I don't know if there's necessarily a right or a wrong approach. I think that's a decision that every company has to make and every people team and executive team needs to make. But this piece just kind of gives some of the perspective as to what some of the downsides to that just open application process may be. LinkedIn had an interesting piece last week that analyzed LinkedIn data on turnover. And what they found was that HR roles actually had the highest level of turnover in the data set they analyzed, almost 50% higher than the mean and the average. And that was not that surprising to me, I think. And there's a range of factors that go into that. You look at tech companies and layoffs, usually the HR and specifically recruiting teams are hit pretty hard by that. Burnout levels are at an all-time high. People switching jobs, experienced leaders moving out of the field into different spaces. So there's a variety of ingredients that make this up, but definitely something that in the field of HR, we want to be sure to keep an eye on. And last piece I want to leave you with, this isn't a new article from this week, but it's something that I just caught and do want to flag it because I think it will impact outside of New York. New York passed legislation that goes into effect in January of 2023. The companies that use AI tools for hiring have to go through a algorithmic bias assessment basically once a year to ensure that it's not injecting bias into the recruiting process. And I think that this is probably a trend that we're going to see more of in the US and around the world as more companies embrace these tools and governments and organizations look to put some safeguards against employees. So definitely something to keep your eye on in January if you're hiring in New York. But again, similar to pay transparency laws, I think that this is something that will continue to gain momentum. So the better you can be thinking about this now and maybe have some of these protocols in place to audit your algorithms, the better. So that's a wrap for this week. We'll see you next week with more news and updates. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you next week.